All right, everyone. Welcome back to the GDFL podcast hosted by yours truly, Andrew Korn. This week, I have the one and only Levi joining me once again. Say hi to the world, Levi.
Hey, good to see you guys.
All right, Levi and I have a pretty good special segment. I want to make sure we have enough time to cover. So I'm going to do a bit of a rapid fire of a little bit of the league recap. So this week, I think the most notable win on here was Beans beat the shit out of me, like 158 to 80. He pretty much almost doubled me up. My team's always good for a few clunkers, a few stinkers every once in a while. So Lamar and Chase Brown combined for like 60 on Thursday, put me in a pretty big hole right away. And that really was almost enough to beat me just as is. A few other big ones on here I want to note were Ryan beating Sokol, which effectively ended Sokol's season and sent him into a massive sell off, which we'll get into more soon. We have Mark beating Stun to again change the standings at the top. We got Jake beating Barbara in a very similar matchup to mine with Beans, where I mean again, Jamar Chase put up 50, and so pretty much made that matchup over before it even started. And then we have the Holsteins coming off a very close win against Chaz, winning 90 to 85. A bit of a shit show of a matchup, but wins are wins. Hard to get by. I'm to come by in this league. And then just taking a look at the standings, I think we're starting to see a much clearer playoff picture. There's four teams at 7-3 with Mark in first, I'm in second, Ryan's in third, and Stun's in fourth. Chaz is on a bit of a three-game losing streak right now. He's fallen to fifth, and then we got the Holsteins in sixth. And then we have four teams at 4-6 with Jake, Beans, Shrew, and Sokol. Logan beat Trevor to separate himself from last, but yeah, Trevor's still in last here. And honestly, this is kind of what I expect the standing, or maybe not the necessarily in order, but I think the six teams in the playoff are currently who I'm expecting to make the playoffs. Levi's is facing the corpse of Trevor the next 2 weeks. If you look at Trevor's starting lineup this week, it's pretty pathetic. I think like six of his top eight flexes are on a bye right now. And then next week, Levi has Trevor again and won't have Josh Allen. So I'm not going to chalk up 2 wins quite yet to Levi, but it's going to be a lot harder for these 4-6 teams to potentially find one of those last playoff spots. So we'll see. Got any thoughts on the standings, Levi?
I'd be more worried if I was Chaz. If he's on a three-game losing streak, things have not necessarily gone in his favor. It's not that I think he's a bad team, but I mean, Jake, Beans, and Barb are not that far behind, and all three of them I could see. Even getting me, I'm not super comfortable, and I've got a good situation the next 2 weeks. So we'll see. We'll be watching it close.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be watching it close for sure. And then just a quick look at the draft standings. So Trevor still has I think that's like a 60-point lead over Logan. And then he has about a 120-point lead over Sokol, but Sokol is back into that 103. But again, with Sokol's recent sell off, he very well could climb into two. And I don't really see Trevor moving off of one with the lineup he has going to be setting the next 2 weeks. I mean, I think Jimmy Garoppolo starting at quarterback for him next week. So unless Stafford gets injured, don't think Trevor's getting any quarterback points. Yeah, there's not a ton changed. I think the biggest movement was Trevor's pick from you, Levi, is now back in the playoff picture. And then two of Ryan's first are now looking like later first than initially they were a few weeks ago.
Mhm.
But, this draft order might be important later in the show. We'll see. And then we have a flurry of trades that have happened. So this first one is between Levi and Ryan. It's Derek Carr, Flacco, and a fourth for 2/3 and a fourth. You want to quickly talk us through this one, Levi?
Not many thoughts. I think everyone knew I was trying to get off these guys, especially with A Rich slated to start this week. I feel good about losing Flacco. It is not maximizing Carr's value, but it's getting something before he dies. So
Mhm.
good for me. And I even would say good for Ryan.
Yep, no, absolutely. Yeah, Ryan needed a QB3. I think Burrow has a bye in week 12, and then Daniels has a bye in week 14. So So getting Carr in there to sub in for those weeks for his starters will be pretty good for him. And he kind of needed a third quarterback, and it's a good budget option for sure.
Mhm.
And then we have the biggest news of the week was Sokol announced to the league that he is in sell mode. The selling kicked off with this trade of Rashad Bateman in a second for Kirk Cousins in a fourth. And then another notable one on here was it was really just Jacoby Myers for a second with a swap of fourths. But I mean, this was a pretty pivotal week for Sokol. I know he'd been toying with it for a little while now on which direction he wants to go with his team. And then he has a pretty tough strength of schedule remaining. And just being in 10th place just looked like it was going to be too hard for him to overcome. So he's selling off some of his vets and bringing in younger talent. Rashad Bateman is like quietly, I think, wide receiver 23 right now. He's actually having a pretty good season. And then getting another second for Kirk Cousins, I think, is a good deal. And then that solidifies Mark's quarterback room for this year and probably even next year, too, since Mark has Penix. So now he has both Atlanta quarterbacks. He has the stack with Cousins, Penix, and Drake London. So, I mean, I like this side for both teams. Kirk Cousins has a pretty nice playoff schedule, too, and very well could be starting over Tua if the matchups are right. And maybe even Mahomes, because Mahomes hasn't had that great of a fantasy season. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think Mark really needed Bateman either. So, I mean, that's I think, a good deal all around. And then Sokol traded Jacoby Myers for a second, which, again, I think is a pretty good deal. Sokol got Myers for 2/3, and then he's cashing out those 2/3 for a second, which I think just in terms of process, just like a good deal in terms of process. Jacoby Myers is also the wide receiver 1 in Vegas right now. I think that's a great get for you, Levi. Like, I think this is another trade. I think it makes sense for both sides, and the price seems to be pretty good.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I tried to do the 2/3 for Myers, and he just pointed out to me now he's the wide receiver 1. I'd rather get a little more than that, which is cool. I'm going all in on this year, and I'm happy to give up a second. Brilliant move by Mark. Great buyout to get Bateman in a second, but Penix Cousins, 2 thumbs up.
Mm-hmm. And then this was one that came in late. Apologies for people watching this on YouTube. Pulling shit from sleepers sucks. Like the quality always looks awful. But new trade came in pretty late after I made the PowerPoint. So we have Rachaad White for a second is essentially the deal with a swap of thirds in future years. And then, yeah, Levi, you got Rachaad White. And then this is your third time, I think, trading for Rachaad White. And the other 2 times were offseason moves that were gone before the season started. So perhaps this is the time Rachaad White finally hits your lineup.
We'll see. He's on bye this week. Happy with the deal, and I think White's a good snag at that price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, motivation for Sokol's clear. I mean, he looks like he's making a bit of a hole at running back right now with trading away Rachaad White. Zach Moss is on IR, and Sokol really only had like 3 or 4 running backs rostered all season to begin with anyway. So, yeah, I mean, again, Sokol is just trying to rebuild and get rid of pieces before. I mean, who knows what happens with Rachaad White with Bucky Irving, but Rachaad White's still been pretty good this year. I think he's still averaging like almost 12 points a game. He's like, I think his demise has been greatly overstated with the emergence of Bucky Irving. So, yeah, I mean,
I think that's artificial. I'm right there with you on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, definitely get it for both perspectives, though. It just adds another piece to the arsenal that you'll be able to start in the playoffs. And yeah, you got that 27-second. Looks like that one's from Ryan from the Trey Benson deal. But really, you've been accumulating those 27 seconds, 27 picks in general.
That's my goal.
Mm-hmm. And then I'll look at some of the upcoming matchups this week. I'm against Jake. I think this matchup's going to be closer than the projections say. I think I'm only averaging like 2 points a game more than him. He doesn't have a second quarterback this week, but I mean, Jake had a really good week last week, so you just never know what'll happen. With Sokol's recent sell-off, I don't think this is a full starting lineup, but I'm still expecting Mark to beat him. We got a pretty big one here with Stun and Ryan both sitting at 7-3. That's going to be a pretty big one for playoff seeding. And then same with Barb and Beans, both sitting at 4-6. Again, that's probably going to, I mean, that's effectively ending one of their seasons. And then we also have Levi and Trevor. Trevor's projection is pretty close to half of what yours is right now, Levi. Again, any given Sunday, you never know what'll happen. But damn, that is a low projection for Trevor. And then lastly, we have Chaz and Logan down here at the bottom. Chaz is currently favored to win by about 40. So I'm expecting Chaz to win that one with the state of Logan's team, but Logan would have beat him last week, so you just never know.
I'll be watching the Shrew and Beans game very closely.
Yeah, the one between Shrew and Beans is definitely the matchup to watch this week. And then just because I want to make sure we had enough time, this is a segment that I had been thinking about doing for a little bit. Levi and I are going to be doing a way too early 2025 mock draft. So I went on Google and found a mock draft that had 3 rounds from Tankathon. And basically, what we're going to be doing is taking the projected landing spots and then assigning them to teams based on our current 2025 draft order. So, yeah, like I said, I got it from Tankathon because they had 3 rounds. As I was going through it, I realized I only needed to pull the first 2 rounds of players out. And I'm going to quickly name off all of them for the people listening on Spotify. So in this mock draft at 101, we have Travis Hunter going to the Jaguars. He's listed as both a corner and receiver. I'm going to include him in this just for the sake of including him. Don't really know if he's going to play receiver in the NFL because I think he's a better corner than receiver, but we shall see. We got Shedeur Sanders going at number 2 to the Giants. We got Cam Ward, QB, going number 3 to the Titans. We have Tet McMillan going number 4 as a wide receiver to the Browns. We have Ashton Genty, a running back, going to the Cowboys at 11. We have Luther Burden, a receiver, going to the Bengals at 13. We have Colston Loveland, a tight end, going to the Broncos at 19. We have Emeka Egbuka, a receiver, going to the Chargers at 23. We have Isaiah Bond, a receiver to the Steelers, going at 27. We have Jalen Milroe, a quarterback, going to the Browns at the 203. We have Quinn Ewers, a QB for the Raiders, going at the 204. We have Tyler Warren, a tight end, going to the Saints at the 206. We have Trey Harris, a receiver to the Patriots, going at 209. We have Ollie Gordon, running back for the Bengals, going at 212. We have Quinshawn Judkins, running back for the Broncos, going at 219. We have Amarian Hampton, running back for the Chargers, going at 224. We have Evan Stewart, receiver for the Commanders, going at 226. We have Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback for the Steelers, going at 228. And at 231, we have Epic Eilmanor, receiver, going to the Lions. And so our draft order for this is going to be Trevor at 1, Ryan at 2, Sokol at 3, Beans at 4, Shrew at 5, Beans at 6, Trevor at 7, Chaz at 8, Stun at 9, Ryan at 10, Corn at 11, and Ryan at 12. And so with the first pick, who do you think Trevor would take at 101 if this were the NFL draft?
I am going to go with Ashton Genty. Don't think he's quite the prospect that John was, but I do think he's the clear-cut rookie 101 with what we know now, especially if he goes 111 to the Cowboys. I don't even think Rever really needs a running back. I do think Rever's smart enough to what seems to be the best player in the draft. I could see him taking someone else. So if you pick someone else, that's not me saying there's no way it's not Genty, but that is the 85% most likely situation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think comparing it to 2 years ago is a pretty good comparison with Bijan versus the other quarterbacks. Because, again, Genty at 11 going to the Cowboys, very appealing. He's gotten a ton of hype. I think he's the Heisman favorite right now. So, I wouldn't blame Trevor at all. He doesn't really need a running back. That's actually probably the least of his current needs. I definitely, if Shedeur Sanders goes at 2 to the Giants, he has Malik Neighbors. I think Trevor would take a very long look at taking Shedeur Sanders at 1 if to get that stack with Malik Neighbors. But again, I think he's going to go Ashton Genty just because he's been kind of the clear 101 this entire time. And I think running backs in general are just a little safer to take, especially if one goes at 11 overall. So we'll take Genty off the board here and give him to Trevor. Okay, so then at 2, we have Ryan. Levi, who do you think Ryan takes in this scenario?
Ryan's quarterback room is pretty set. He could use a third long term, but I don't think he's going to take one here. I think Ryan would receiver, and at that point, it's take your pick. Do you like Tet to the Browns or do you like Travis Hunter to the Jags? Plays receiver, I like Hunter to the Jags, but if he plays corner, if you want to deal with the headache of trying to figure out what he's going to play, I don't know what that will look like. Really like Tet McMillan. He's like 6'4", 6'5". Would be a great addition to Cleveland's roster. I'd say pick your poison between the two for me. I like Tet. That's my guy. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I would go Ted McMillan too, just because again, we don't really know what position Travis Hunter's playing. And I think by the time we actually do our draft, we will know. So I think for the time being, I'm gonna lean Ted McMillan. And I think the comp I've seen for him most is Mike Evans, like in terms of play style. And so that's someone I'm pretty high on. I mean, it's NFL this mock draft had him going 4 overall, and the Browns pretty desperately need a wide receiver 1. So I'm with you there. I think Ryan built this roster to really not need a receiver, but based on what the board is, and I mean, I really like Ted McMillan as a prospect. We'll have Ryan taking Ted McMillan here at 2. Okay, up next we have Sokol at 3. To me, that there's 2 that stand out. I think it's either Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. I think that's, again, pick your poison. If quarterbacks are going 2-3, I think he's just going to take whatever one he likes more. I mean, I think if I were picking and this was what happened, I would take Shedeur Sanders just because he has Malik Neighbors at receiver if he's on the Giants versus the Titans situation being a lot of just like older players and Calvin Ridley, and they don't really have a receiver 2 right now. I honestly couldn't name them off the top of my head. So I think I'd go Shedeur Sanders here for Sokol. What do you think, Levi?
I do think it's a quarterback, and I personally prefer Shedeur Sanders. When I look at historic quarterback rooms since we started the league, I wouldn't be surprised if he took Ward, but I want to go Sanders here because that is my QB1 of the class, especially in this, if this is how it goes.
Mm-hmm. That looks like we're in agreement there. And we'll put Shedeur Sanders with Sokol. Okay, up next, we have Beans. Beans with the 4th overall pick. This is an interesting one because I really think Beans could go in a couple different directions. I mean, this mock draft says Will Levis is no longer the starter in Tennessee. So, I mean, if he's not a big believer in J.J. McCarthy, I could see him taking Cam Ward on the Titans here. Looks like Ollie Gordon. It's probably a little early to take Ollie Gordon, but running back to the Bengals is very interesting, especially if the way Chase Brown has played. Beans does have Chase Brown, but I think any running back to the Bengals would be very, very interesting. Beans also really could use a receiver, though, so I think that's really Travis Hunter, Luther Burden is probably what he's picking between here, is what I would assume Beans would do, because I think he's going to bank on JJ being his QB2. And then maybe Fields gets another shot somewhere, or Fields is just another just high ceiling backup to have should someone ever get injured. So I think I would, just because I don't know if Travis Hunter is a receiver in the NFL or not, I might actually take Luther Burden here, but I want to hear your thoughts are, Levi.
I follow all of that. I wouldn't be surprised to see him take Cam Ward if this were to happen, but I know Beans believes in Justin Fields. I don't think Beans is going to take a quarterback in this scenario. And I think if we had the draft and still didn't know what position Hunter would play, I do think Beans would risk it. But I also really like Luther Burden. So when in doubt, lean with the prospect you trust. I'm cool with Luther Burden.
Yeah.
It's not my preferred landing spot for him, but that would still be a deadly wide receiver duo for Joe Burrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is probably under the assumption T. Higgins is leaving. I don't really see them taking a receiver at 13 if T. Higgins is still there. So that's a pretty big if, but let's just assume that for the sake of this mock draft. I think Beans would go Luther Burden in the situation.
Right.
So up next, we have Shrew. I know Shrew really wanted to get another receiver in the last draft when he took Bowers instead, because I know he really wanted one of the top 3 receivers. And really, if you look at his team, I think running back is absolutely fine on his team. So I don't think I'd concern any of the running backs. He has Stroud and Caleb and Stafford, assuming Stafford is playing again next year, which I mean, I think he is, but you just never know. I think Shrew would also lean receiver here. And I think Shrew would probably take Travis Hunter if Travis Hunter is still on the board. I think Shrew is shown to take some risks every once in a while. I think Shrew would probably go Travis Hunter here if this was the board, but I want to hear what your thoughts are.
It's not taking a tight end. And I don't know what order they're going to go in, but the, the receivers are going to go Tet, Luther, and Travis in some order. So seems like Travis is the pick here, and Shrew can also afford to take the risk of Travis.
All right, so we got Travis Hunter to Shrew. All right, now we have Beans at 6 here. I think I would honestly Cam Ward if he goes 3 to the Titans and is still sitting here at 6. I think there's a scenario where Trevor trades up a spot to make sure he gets them. I'm not going to mock that for this situation though. But I mean, I think Beans would probably just take the quarterback. Just again, like if third overall pick is a quarterback is falling, I'd probably go Cam Ward if I were Beans. Yep.
Same, especially because he has Will Levis, and he in this scenario just lost Will Levis.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go Cam Ward to Beans. Okay. Up next, we have Trevor. I mean, just looking at what's on the board, I mean, to me, I think the Trevor does need a QB too. I don't think he reaches to take one though here. My best guess is he just goes Emeka Egbuka. Being a receiver on the Chargers, it's just appealing. Herbert gets another weapon. Herbert's, I think, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I don't think Trevor overthinks this one. Just goes Emeka Egbuka.
I would agree. Historically, in the GDFL, when a quarterback goes early second in the real draft, they go late first, and I just don't think he would reach. So Egbuka seems like the most obvious talent to go here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really think Trevor would be trying to aggressively trade up in this scenario if quarterbacks are starting to fall a little bit. Assuming he takes Genty at 1, this whole thing is completely different if he goes quarterback at 1. But yeah, I mean Trevor's going to need a QB too, and I think could aggressively attack the draft to get one of them if 2 of them go in the top 3. Okay, so up next we have Chaz. Chaz, I think looking at the board, he's probably like Chaz has 4 starting quarterbacks right now with Baker, Darnold, Geno, and Russ. I'm assuming at least 3 of them will still be the starter next year. So, like I think both Darnold and Russ have been playing well enough. Well, they'll be a starter somewhere. It might not be with their current teams, but I bet Russ probably goes back to the Steelers. So I think that takes Chaz out of the running for a quarterback. Again, just looking at the board here, Isaiah Bond is a first-round receiver to the Steelers. Chaz has Russ. I think Chaz would probably take the receiver. I mean, I think he could go either receiver or running back. I don't think he'd consider Colston Loveland here just because he has McBride. But I think I'd go Isaiah Bond for Chaz.
I think so too. It's just going to be dealer's choice on which flex he prefers. Russ Steelers connection, as long as Russ is in Pittsburgh, I like that. I really like these 3 running backs, but I don't think he's one. He's very much married to Ken Walker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has CMC and Ken Walker, which is a lethal 1-2 duo. I'm trying to remember. I think he has like Madison and Jalen Warren. So like he could use an RB3. And like again, I really like the landing spots for Ali Gordon and Amarian Hampton here, being on the Bengals and Chargers respectively. But I think let's go with Bond for Chaz for now. Okay, up next we have Stun. So I think this is where we start to see a bit of a run at running back. I think Stun probably goes Ali Gordon here, just being the running back on the Bengals. And Stun has a filthy room of wide receivers and needs to build that running back army back up. So I think Stun goes Ollie Gordon here.
Few times two on that. All three of these running backs and situations are equal to me. I would just go in order, and Ollie Gordon's the one.
Mm-hmm. All right, so put Ollie Gordon to Stun.
I also swear I'm not just trying to agree with you. This is really what I think would happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I know I think a lot of it's just like we're evaluating everyone's roster similarly. And so, like, we've had some like mindedness in terms of taking who we think the best player available is while also considering team fit. It just happens to be how the cookie's crumbling right now.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have Ryan here at 10. I think Ryan really built his roster to take running backs in this draft. So I would be shocked if he doesn't take one here. I like the landing spot of being on the Chargers just a little bit more, just because of the way the Jim Harbaugh offense has been operating with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards this year. I think I would probably take Amari and Hampton over Quinshon Judkins, even though Judkins goes first in the real draft. That's just, again, that's just landing spot bias to me. They're going 5 picks apart, so there's really probably not that much difference in terms of actual prospect. But I want to see what your thoughts are here, Levi.
I'm fine with putting Hampton there. Now, if it were me, I would take Judkins. I've watched quite a bit of the Broncos this year. They really like their checkdowns, and they're really looking for someone to be an answer at running back. So that's also viewership bias. But in terms of the prospects, and I like both landing spots well enough. They're relatively equal. You can put Hampton there.
You might have actually talked me into putting Judkins there for
I
the
have no
like,
qualms with it.
yeah, I might put Judkins there at 10 for Ryan, actually, just because like the Sean Payton offense, like has always historically had a lot of receptions for running backs. And if Quinshon Judkins becomes like an Eckler or a Kamara type, like I definitely could see that being what the outcome is there. So I'm gonna put Judkins there at 10 for Ryan.
They lose Javante this offseason, which leaves them with Estime and McLaughlin. McLaughlin is nothing special. Estime can run forward, at least get 3 yards and fall over. I really like that Broncos landing spot.
Yeah, Estime is more of the early down grinder, like the Gus Edwards type. Like I don't really view Estime as much of a pass catcher. Like I think he's just going to be
No.
the power back in that offense. Okay, up next we have me at 11. So I think this is a pretty interesting spot for me. There's a handful of players that I think I would consider here. With my tight end room being Ferguson and Hunter Henry, I would give a lot of consideration to Colston Loveland. He's been pretty good at Michigan this year. Same reason why we talked about Amari and Hampton. I really like that Chargers landing spot for him. If I would consider Jalen Milrow probably of the Browns, just because I think he is that mobile quarterback and just chasing upside there. So, I mean, I really could talk myself into picking any of 3 of Milrow, Hampton, or Colston Loveland. What do you think, Levi?
If I am Coach Korn at my roster and what went right versus what went wrong this season, I'm going to invest in Jalen Milrow at the going to the Browns. You're just chasing upside at that point. Really, I mean, anything can happen, but I think you're still competitive next year, even if he's benched the whole year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if Milrow goes to the Browns, I mean, we saw how Kevin Stefanski's offense has looked with Joe Flacco last year, how it looked with Jameis Winston 1 week so far this year. Kevin Stefanski is a coach. I mean, he's won Coach of the Year twice. He's someone I have a lot of respect for. I've never really put a ton of stock into the tight end position either. I mean, I think it's been fairly obvious by who my tight ends have been in this league since the league has started. And so I think I'm going to go Jalen Milrow here. Again, just chasing upside. Potentially someone I could trade later or maybe move on from Dak if Milrow's truly good. But I think I would go Milrow here just because I've always liked that kind of archetype at quarterback. And then last but certainly not least, we have Ryan here at 12. I think for the same reasons why he takes Judkins, I think he built his roster to have a hole at running back, and I think he'd probably go Hampton here.
I agree. It's also just a perfect landing spot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in this mock draft, we took Trevor at 1, taking Ashton Genty, running back for the Cowboys. Ryan at 2, taking Ted McMillan, wide receiver on the Browns. Sokol at pick 3, taking Shedeur Sanders, quarterback for the Giants. For Beans at number 4, we have him taking Luther Burden, receiver for the Bengals. At 5, we have Shrew taking Travis Hunter, receiver for the Jags. At 6, we have Beans taking Cam Ward, quarterback for the Titans. At 7, we have Trevor taking Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver for the Chargers. At 8, we have Chaz taking Isaiah Bond, wide receiver for the Steelers. At 9, we have Stun taking Ollie Gordon, running back for the Bengals. At 10, we have Ryan taking Quinshawn Judkins, running back for the Broncos. At 11, we have Korn taking Jalen Milroe, quarterback for the Browns. And at 12, we have Ryan taking Omarion Hampton, running back for the Chargers. Okay, so if this was the first round, which of these picks do you think is your favorite pick for these teams?
I think Hampton falling to 12 is quite the steal. I think Milroe to you is a really good fit. I agree that Trevor in this situation should trade up and get Cam Ward, but for Beans to get Cam Ward at 6, that seems like the steal of the draft. That is the one pick I'd really highlight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm in agreement with you there. I think Cam Ward at 6 would be a phenomenal pick for Beans. I don't really think this is how the draft is going to go. Like realistically, I think someone would trade up to Beans at 4 to take Cam Ward more than likely. Maybe not. We'd see. I think Trevor though would be aggressively trying to move up from your pick at 7, and he has a shit ton of draft capital to be able to move up. So, I mean, we'll see what happens in the real draft. Yeah, I mean, I think overall I'm pretty satisfied with how this board turned out. I think there's a chance that some of these running backs might go over some of the receivers just based on these landing spots. You never know who someone prefers. I think another pick I really like here would be Shedeur Sanders to Sokol at 3. I think Sokol is pretty much a lock to take a quarterback if this is how the draft actually goes, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. And I think Sokol's pretty locked into a top 3 pick at this point, and I would be stunned if Ashton Genty didn't go 1 or 2. Yeah, no, I think it'd be really interesting if we were to do this.
I agree.
Yeah, if
Genty
Trevor,
seems like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our timing's off. If Genty top 2, I'd be just as shocked. He seems like quite the prospect. Again, I don't think he's a Bijan, but I think he's instantly a top 6 dynasty running back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you can make the case of him even being top 3. Like, I think if he's going to the Cowboys, that's it seems like to be the match made in heaven. Like Genty, Gibbs, Bijan are all right there, and like you probably can even rank him top 3 now if you really wanted to, depending on how you look at Brees or Achane or Jonathan Taylor. I think there's a case to be made of Genty just up there. Again, a lot of that's age. We have no idea what his landing spot's going to be, but yeah, Genty that the prospects getting a lot of buzz right now. I think the other thing that's pretty notable for me on here would be Colston Loveland, tight end for the Broncos, falling out of the first round in our draft. Colston Loveland's, I mean, I've watched a little bit of Michigan this year, not a ton. I think he's a pretty good tight end. And if he goes to the Broncos, I think he's immediately he's probably their second best weapon behind Sutton in that offense, like immediately. So I could really see Loveland making an impact right away with the Broncos. And I think he'd probably go to I think Trevor has his own second still. So I think Trevor might take him there, even if he doesn't need a tight end, just in terms of pure value. Could also take Quinn Ewers. I know Trevor will actually that might even be more likely as Trevor just taking another quarterback or taking a quarterback if he doesn't have one yet at 201. So it could be interesting there. All right, Levi, we are coming in on time. Do you have any closing thoughts you want to share for this GDFL podcast?
Go Lions, go Cows. That's where my focus is right now.
Yeah, go Lions. Lions have hopefully a pretty easy matchup this week with the Jags. Should probably beat the shit out of them if Mac Jones is starting. With that, this has been your Commissioner Andrew Korn. I hope everyone has a great week and love you all. Peace out.